Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. We are in the early stages of the 2036 season. We've made it to May 1st, and our Buffalo Wings are 13-9, one game behind in the National League East. So the season's gone reasonably well so far. We're a game behind the Expos, as I mentioned, half a game ahead of the Phillies, and a game and a half ahead of the Braves in these early stages of the season. Mentioned at the end of our last episode that our manager had taken over some lineup decisions that I wanted, and I found the setting that was wrong on that. So unfortunately for Arturo Flores, he'll be getting a bit less playing time. He's done pretty well for us thus far, hitting .278 with 4 homers and 19 ribbies in his first 79 at-bats with us. Number 97 prospect in baseball, no question about his power. The big question we have is just how proficient he's really going to be against right-handed pitching. So right now we're going to play him more frequently against left-handed pitching, although this year he's done, I assume, a reasonable job against right-handed pitching. He actually is hitting .286 against right-handed pitching, so hitting better against righties than lefties. But we haven't faced many lefties at all yet this year, so an extremely small sample size, particularly against lefties, and quite honestly in general, since we're only 22 games, and in the case of Flores, 79 at-bats into what will qualify most likely as his rookie season. And we've simmed ahead to towards the end of May, not quite there yet, and had a real rough patch. We lost 7 games in a row, and at this point, we've stabilized things a bit over the last week or so with a 4-3 record after those 7 consecutive losses. But that said, we're standing at 22-21, 4.5 games out in the NL East, and 4 games behind in the standings. Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Pittsburgh are all ahead of us, and we're half a game up on Montreal. Looking at the wild card standings, we're only a game out of the wild card, so not in a horrible spot, but certainly with the excellent regular seasons we've had for the last several years, it's a bit surprising to even be in late May and not feel like this team almost has a playoff spot racked up, which certainly is not the case this year. Taking a quick look at the league leaders, Deshaun Seifu leading the league with 30 steals, hitting .316 a year after he won his first batting title with a .312 average. So he remains very productive, and he is set to be a free agent at the end of this season. Taking a look at the pitching staff and the pitching leaders, Alexis Barajas, 4-2 record, 196 ERA, 71 strikeouts and 55 innings pitched. He is second in the National League in pitcher WAR. We'll check in, since we mentioned that Seifu is a potential free agent. Part of the reason we haven't looked to extend him yet is that we're waiting to see what happens with Shamar Jenneret as far as whether or not he opts into his contract after this season. And he's hitting .290 with 6 homers and 33 ribbies. A solid year with a 134 WRC plus, but certainly not quite as effective as he's been his first 2 years in Buffalo, where he led the league in ribbies each year, won the World Series MVP in 2034, and won the National League MVP last year. So not having quite a big season so far, a little over a quarter of the way through the season at this point. Hopefully he puts up big numbers for us. We're going to need his offense to help us win. And as we've talked about in previous episodes, as important as he is, given that Seifu is a number 1 overall pick who has spent his entire career in our organization, we're going to try to be as creative as possible in terms of bringing him back next year, particularly in a way that is financially responsible. But there's really little way for us to do it other than just completely pulling our scouting and player development budgets down to almost nothing if Jeanneret opts into the contract. That may be what we need to end up doing. I do like the fact that Seifu is now viewed as an Iron Man in terms of his injury proneness. Looking at what he's looking for at this point, $24.4 million a year for 8 years, taking him up through his age 39 season. He's about to turn 32 years old in about a week and a half. He's a player that is extremely reliant on his speed. Doesn't have much home run power. Is a acceptable defensive player at third base and second base, but certainly not the player who won a couple of Gold Gloves over a half a decade ago at this point. So it's going to be an interesting decision. I'd prefer not to make an 8-year commitment to a player who's reliant on his speed, but just kind of showing how unrealistic some of the expectations are in this game. You'll see that Seifu's expectation is supposedly to be a cleanup hitter. And as we talked about, his home run power is non-existent. He has at this point over 5,700 career at-bats with 32 home runs and a career high of 7. I don't know why he all of a sudden wants to be a cleanup hitter. I guess if you think about advanced statistical analysis and metrics, perhaps there's some rationale to put a guy with no power in the 4-hole. But with the fact that he's got such excellent speed and has consistently hit for a 300 average for the last several years now, although his career number is still only at 297, despite the fact that he does hit a lot of extra base hits. I'm old school enough that I am not willing to believe that Seifu is an ideal cleanup hitter. And we won yesterday 8-0 over Atlanta, and James Wood, who's gotten a bit more playing time recently, hit the 400th homer of his career, hitting just 206 this year, which is exactly where he hit last year, but much better power with 6 homers and 63 at-bats. Last year he had just 15 homers and 349 at-bats, so he's been a bit above average in terms of his offensive production, a bit above replacement level in terms of his overall WAR. Probably still not an optimal center fielder for us, but I still like his bat against right-handed pitching compared to some of the other options in our lineup, so we're going to give him a bit more of a leash to remain in the lineup before potentially turning to one of the younger players who's better defensively. And we've now made it to June 1st, and after we won that first game against Atlanta, we had some problems with them. So we are 25-24 now, 4.5 games back here in the division. Looking at the wild card, 2 games out there. So going to have to start improving things. Seifu up to 37 steals and he's second in the National League in batter WAR, has the batting average up to 335, so he's hit really well over the last several days, but only going to make him more expensive for us to potentially bring him back next season. And given that we've got no money for extensions available since Jeanneret's contract is on the books, really can't realistically offer Seifu an extension right now unless we wanted to just pull scouting and development down to bare bones numbers. We could try to get him signed and then push them back up, but at this point that's a little bit gamey, and we will just wait to the off season and see what happens, and hopefully continue investing fully into scouting and player development. We've got the first-year player draft coming up in just a few weeks at this point, and we've also got, at this point in the beginning of June, all of our farm teams playing or about to begin playing very soon. Minor league system still ranks second overall check in on the two guys that are close to the majors potentially. Alexis Mendoza looks like he's got a mild hamstring strain. 3-4 with a 4.74 ERA for AAA Albany. Has struck out more than a batter per inning. His ERA plus and FIP minus both above average, and a 2.93 Sierra. Certainly would think if we have some need for a pitcher due to injuries, Mendoza will be on the short list to promote. Joe Gallagher has a ton of power, as we knew, hitting 267 with 26 home runs in 187 at-bats for AAA Albany. Doesn't really have a position to play effectively defensively, but he is hitting well enough this year that if Jeanneret opts out, it's obviously a huge hit to our offense, but with guys like Joe Gallagher and Arturo Flores around, opening up that spot at designated hitter for a younger and cheaper player, while also potentially giving us the opportunity to bring back franchise icon Seifu, makes in a weird way me to continue to root that as great as Jeanneret has been for us, and as hopefully helpful he'll be to winning another World Series this year. There is part of me that still hopes he'll opt out after another great season for us. And taking a look at our team statistics, it was a rough month in May with a 12-15 record. We've definitely struggled against left-handed pitching thus far this season, and we faced a lot more lefties in May than we did in April. But our Pythagorean record is 4 games better than where we are right now. We're barely 500. Pythagorean numbers suggest we should have close to a 600 winning percentage. We're 5th in the National League in runs scored, and as you can see, we are in the top handful in most offensive categories. Home runs and walks, we're more middle of the pack, but otherwise we're top, as I said, 5 teams in the league in pretty much every offensive category. And runs allowed, we're tied for first, and you can see for the most part we're in the top 5 or 6 in just about every pitching category as well. Our defense is average-ish to perhaps slightly above average, so we've gotten a bit unlucky thus far. Clearly we need that to change to get this team back into the playoffs and hopefully, when all is said and done, compete for another NL East title and compete to have the best record in baseball in September. But nothing in the numbers that I see here suggests to me that we need to do something radical yet to change the direction of this team. Still got 2 months till we reach the trade deadline, so at this point we're just going to keep following how the team does, and hopefully we'll go on a nice long winning streak that'll make us feel better about where we are in the standings. And the team has been playing better in the month of June. Have the record up to 37-29. So that's positive. You can see we were 3-3 the first week of the month, but since then we've been winning a lot more games than we've lost. We've only lost twice over the last 2 weeks, which is very helpful as we're trying to get this team back into contention, as we talked about recently, for the NL East, as well as the best record in baseball. 2.5 back in the division now, and we are up 1 for a wild card spot at this point. Seifu, with 48 steals, continues to head towards his 9th consecutive season leading the National League in stolen bases. He's now leading the National League in batter war, so he's having a monster season for us right before he finally gets an opportunity to hit free agency. Can see the demand up to around $26 million, but he is only looking for 7 years now. As I talked about, we've got to see what happens with Jeanneret before we can make a decision on Seifu. But my intention, barring a major injury to Seifu, or barring some dramatic decline in his performance and ratings over the next 3 or 4 months is to do everything possible next offseason to bring him back. If Jeanneret does opt in, he's got a no-trade clause, so he'll be difficult to get off the books. But there are other levers that we will be able to press between the end of the regular season and when free agents file to hopefully ensure that Seifu will be back with us if we decide we want to bring him back. Mike Heiner's got an 18-game hitting streak going. Looks like he's having a bit of a bounce back year this year, hitting .287 with 11 homers and 244 at-bats. Barajas is 7-3 now with a .211 ERA, third in the National League. Jorge Carrillo, 9-2 record, tied for second in wins. And Barajas at this point is third in the National League in pitcher WAR. So a lot of players having pretty solid seasons for us. In our next episode, we'll do a deep dive when we get to the All-Star break as to exactly how everybody is performing. But we will check in on Jeanneret, since our hope is he has a monster year and helps us win a World Series and then maybe opts out. He's got the batting average back over 300, 9 homers and 52 ribbies here on June 21st. So certainly not as much home run power as we've seen from him in previous seasons. And clearly, if he's not leading the National League in ribbies, which he's done each season he's been in the National League, and the year before he joined us in the American League when he won the AL MVP, anything less than leading the league in ribbies is a bit of a downturn for Mr. Jeanneret. That said, he still looks like he's having a very good season with a 138 WRC plus for us. And we'll now turn our attention to previewing some of the top players available in the draft. And as we've gotten used to at this point, after having the best record during the regular season last year, our Buffalo Wings will be picking once again at the end of the first round, number 34 this season. So unlikely that any of these top prospects are going to be available when we're picking. But there's always a chance. I'm guessing the 22-year-old college reliever C.J. Dugan may be available. Looks like he could certainly be a useful relief pitcher. Probably not a direction that we're going to go in the first round of the draft, though, even if it's pick number 34. Andres Partida is a 20-year-old out of UNC Wilmington. Like his durability, he's got the same nickname as good old Dennis Oil Can Boyd, apparently. 3 pitches that are above major league average or major league quality at this point. Excellent movement on his pitches. Good stamina, really good at holding runners. The concern is he's almost 21 years old and he still has no clue where the baseball is going to go. A couple of insane numbers in his 112 2/3 innings for his college team this year. Walked 69 batters and struck out 218. So although his strikeout to walk ratio of 3.2 is probably acceptable, the 5.5 walks per 9 innings are definitely not, and the 17.4 strikeouts per 9 innings is absolutely ridiculous. Don't think that's a direction we'll end up going, but quite honestly, if he's available with the 34th pick, even with our concerns about his control, he'd probably be in the mix of players to consider. Jim Lance is a starting pitching prospect out of California high school, headed to University of Louisiana Lafayette. Like the work ethic, throws in the mid-90s. That slider develops. Looks like he could have 3 pretty good major league pitches, potentially plus stuff, movement, and control. Not a horrible prospect. Pete Ginley is a reliever. Stuff looks like it could be potentially electric. Don't think we'll go with a reliever at number 34. Andy Flores, 18-year-old. Going to need that changeup to develop. Otherwise, he's probably a high-end reliever. Probably not a direction we'll go, and who knows if he'll even be around for us to make that decision. Steve Bourne, 21-year-old college pitcher out of Francis Marion University. I do not know where that is. Oh, I guess it's in Florence, South Carolina. Thank you, people at OOTP, letting me know information. Looks like he's got a 4 to 5 pitch arsenal, most of which are already major league quality or above major league quality. So his stuff looks potentially exceptional. Movement above average. Issue, as we've talked about with others, with him is going to be control. Can he effectively get the ball over the plate, or is he going to be walking a crazy amount of batters in the majors? Now we kind of move into the 4.5 and 5-star pitching prospects, the best of the best, according to our scout at least. Tim Robinson, an 18-year-old starting pitcher, like the high leadership and work ethic. He's got a potential 6-pitch arsenal, even if the slider doesn't really develop much more and the changeup doesn't do much. As long as he gets that curve working, he's going to have a 4-pitch arsenal. So could have plus stuff, plus movement, and plus control. Pretty interesting prospect. He's looking for a full price at $8.5 million. That makes me think there's a chance he could be around for us where we will be picking. Josh Nagy, 17-year-old, good personality, really good stamina, although he's not great at holding on runners. Goes to George M. Steinbrenner High School in Florida. Committed to UL Monroe. So a lot of these top prospects considering their college careers in Louisiana this year. 3 to 4 pitch arsenal, stuff and movement both look like they could be incredible. Control, as often is the question. Tim Mays is a college reliever out of BYU. Looks like he's almost ready to contribute at the major leagues at this point. He very well could be available. He'd probably be in consideration. I don't love taking a reliever in the first round, even if it's pick 34. But if, as we see how the draft breaks, there's nobody that we're really excited about, this is a guy who could be helping us and helping us in a cost-effective way very soon. And then the star of the pitching prospects is Jeff Simons, lefty out of Maryland. Looks like he could have a potential 6-pitch arsenal, even if the changeup doesn't develop. The slider and the curve probably going to move in the right direction. So potential 5-pitch arsenal at the least, maybe 6. His stuff could be electric, movement a bit above average, control average, really good stamina, really good at holding runners, throws in the mid-90s. He's durable. Very interesting prospect. I think it's very unlikely that we will see Porky when we are picking number 34. It's conceivable he'll go number 1 overall. I hope, and it seems a lot of times, that the OOTP nicknames are just random and have nothing to do with the player. I would hope in the case of him being 6'8", 200 pounds, they call him Porky to be clever, because he's clearly not Porky. But I'm guessing that it's just one of those random things that happens in OOTP. And we'll take a look at some of the top hitting prospects now. Only going to look at 15. We're going to look at the 4.5-star or higher players, plus 1 college player who is not far off from potentially contributing. And that's Jaheim Lawal, a junior out of Clemson. Excellent defensive range, excellent at turning the double play. Looks like a potential Gold Glove winning second baseman to me, and think he could also be a pretty good defensive shortstop. He's got some speed on the base paths, really good with his contact and power. Home run power, non-existent. Eye, not great, but looks like he could be pretty good at avoiding strikeouts. Don't want to put a lot of pressure on this guy, but his profile is not all that different than what we had with Deshaun Seifu back in the day when we made him the #1 pick overall. Seifu, I believe his contact and his gap power both potentially off the charts. Seifu's speed was better. Seifu was not as good defensively. Seifu was more durable. I think it's unlikely that Jaheim Lawal will be available for us at the 34th pick, but particularly with the potential for us to be losing Seifu this year if things don't go well, bringing on a 22-year-old who possibly by sometime next year could be taking over a leadoff role and the ability to play high-level infield defensively for us would not be the least attractive way to go. But again, I think it's pretty unlikely he'll be around there for us at 34, but certainly would be a consideration if he was. Taking a look now at the 4.5-star prospects, Eric Williams, center fielder out of Huntington Beach, California. Looks like a interesting-ish bat with 60 outfield range, decent speed. Not a great prospect. Feels like the type of guy, if someone is going to fall to us at 34, somebody like him, probably the type of profile that we'd have available. Zach Riffey, an 18-year-old out of Houston, Texas. Like the home run power, doesn't bring much to the table defensively or on the base paths. He's a pure first base / DH, and he's also looking for $11 million, so he could certainly be there for us. Mike O'Brien, another center fielder, looks more like a right fielder to me with that profile. Not a ton of speed. The bat potentially interesting. Similar to Williams, O'Brien probably will be gone, but if he makes it to us, we'd have to think about someone with that profile. Shortstop Toby Golston, pretty interesting defensive profile, pretty uninteresting personality, but looks like he could be a decent hitter with plus contact, plus home run power. When you combine those things with 70 range in the infield, certainly a potentially interesting prospect for the player out of Sacramento State. Jared Barr, third baseman out of Bryant University. Like the personality here. Don't love him defensively. He's a first base / third baseman. Can't really play him anywhere else. The contact potentially being off the charts is intriguing, particularly if that home run power does develop to above average. He's 21 years old, though, and right now it's a 30, so he could also end up being a guy who hits for a decent average without a ton of power, which, given that he's not an exceptional defensive player, makes it a bit of a hard sell to me. But at 34, that's the type of guy that we might be getting a look at. So I don't think it's inconceivable that we'll see one of the 4.5-star guys fall to us at the 34th pick. These next 9 guys, the 5-star prospects, I think it's pretty unlikely any of them will be around for us. Clearly would love the opportunity to draft some of these guys. Center fielder Mike Black, potentially an outstanding hitter if he fully develops. He's more of a corner outfielder, doesn't have great speed, looking for pretty big money. Still think he'll probably be gone before we pick. Irving Barunda, a center fielder out of Delta State in Cleveland, Mississippi. Looks like a very advanced prospect, as you would expect for a 22-year-old who's a college junior. Not too far off from being able to help at the major league level, and if he fully develops, he is a big-time bat. A bit surprising to see a college player looking for $10 million. I guess it's because he's a junior and he can go back to college next year if he doesn't get his number. Ben Culpepper is a center fielder, like the outfield range, like the good speed, although he's not particularly adept at putting that speed to good use. Could have plus contact and home run power. Looking for a lot of money. Chi Chan, maybe he's around for us just because he's looking for such crazy money. But I still think ultimately these five-star guys are more likely than not to all be off, or more accurately, primarily most of them be off the market by the time we're picking. TJ Fetter is a first baseman, like the durability, like the potential bat. Don't like the defense or the speed. Eric Findley is a right fielder. Looks like he could have a pretty interesting bat, like that 75 home run power and 70 I if he fully develops. He's competent-ish in left or right field. Looking for big money at $11 million. Devin Porter is a right fielder. Like the durability, like the high work ethic. He, again, is a competent corner outfielder with a potentially really big bat if that contact and home run power both develop to borderline exceptional levels. Mike Smithmeyer, center fielder out of St. Michael's in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Some good personality traits, decent outfield range, potentially really interesting bat if he fully develops. Certainly no guarantees that it will. He's got a little bit of speed. I like him. He probably won't be around when we're picking. Ken Tackett, a right fielder. Volunteer High School in Knoxville, Tennessee. I guess it's in Churchill. He was born in Knoxville. Guessing that has something to do with the volunteer state. And he's going to make the folks in Tennessee angry by going to the University of Oklahoma instead of Tennessee, assuming he doesn't sign a pro contract. Looks like he could be another guy with a pretty interesting bat, has a little bit of speed, and a competent corner outfielder, as we've seen with many others. And last among the five-star prospects is Jimpsy Whitson, right fielder with potentially outstanding contact and home run power. Competent-ish in the outfield. Don't love that 35 error rating. Not a lot of speed. Looking for crazy money at $12 million. But if you're a guy with 80 contact and 75 home run power, who also knows how to draw a walk if he fully develops, you're a pretty interesting hitter. So a lot of outfielders among the top prospects this year, according to our scout. Going to be real interesting to see what ends up happening when we're picking 34th in the draft. And I guess it makes sense at this point to let you see who's available. If I'm asking you for help, I can, in a matter of a fraction of a second, sim ahead to our 34th pick in the draft and let you know what the options really are. So I guess I'm going to do that. And looking at the draft log, a lot of the names that we looked at, Irving Barunda went first overall, followed by Eric Findley and Zach Riffey. Toby Golston, who we mentioned, went 13th. Jaheim Lawal, who we felt was the potential Deshaun Seifu protege, went 14th overall to the Dodgers. Arturo Flores, there's a familiar name, not somebody we looked at, but we've got an Arturo Flores on our team. Jeff Simons, the starting pitcher that we really liked, the five-star starting pitching prospect, didn't go until 29th to the Yankees, so bit of a bummer that we don't get a shot at him. But when all was said and done, most of the big prospects we talked about are off the boards. I think Eric Williams, the 4.5-star center fielder, was one of the guys who we thought might make it to us, and he's the only 4.5-star position player who did, out of Huntington Beach High School. Not looking for crazy money, decent outfield range, decent speed, a decent potential bat if he fully develops. Not a horrible guy for us to consider. And we also have one page left of 4-star prospects that we haven't looked at who are available. So we'll take a look at those right now. Certainly with one player looked at, Williams is the direction we would go. But these 4-star guys are generally not looking for crazy money either. So there might be something interesting here. Mike Selar, a right fielder out of Stanislaus State University. He's a corner outfielder, not much speed, decent bat. I think I'd prefer Williams to him. Vic Dunkley, a 6'9" first baseman. No speed, he is durable. Doesn't bring much to the table defensively, although he's at least got decent range for a first baseman. A potentially interesting-ish bat. Extreme pull ground ball hitter who you're going to want to be hitting some home runs. Not sure how well that will work. Catcher Nate Fisher, an 18-year-old. Love the home run power in the eye. Don't know if he's ever going to make enough contact to be a everyday player in the majors, particularly given that it looks like he's well below average defensively. Jamie Monteleone, 18-year-old right fielder. Not that exciting to me. Bobby Notaro, a 17-year-old third baseman. Like the speed here. At least he's exceptional or borderline exceptional at something. Pretty good contact and gap power to go with that speed, and it looks like he could also potentially draw some walks. So he's not a completely uninteresting prospect. He's got the arm to be a decent third baseman. He would hope that maybe the range or error get better. But I don't hate Bobby the Bird Notaro. Gabe Summerfeld, 18-year-old first baseman. A decent bat. I mean, it would be a good major league bat if it completely develops, but it's really all he brings to the table. And then Mike Tanner, a second baseman, decent infield range, not a lot of speed, and intriguing-ish potential bat. I haven't spent more time thinking about these players than I've spent talking through them with you over the last couple of minutes. I'll do more of that online eventually. But my initial thought is that among the position players, Eric Williams is probably a pretty safe and stable pick. Our scout says he's the highest potential guy out there. Mike Tanner, I'd consider. I don't love the lack of speed. I don't love that he's a second baseman who's not really good at turning the double play and is going to make errors on a fair amount of balls that he gets to. But those ratings can get better, and he's got an interesting bat. And then there's Bobby Notaro, who is not a perfect prospect either, but if he fully develops with that speed, he's at least interesting in bringing a dimension to the game that you think he would really excel at. So I'd say Williams, Notaro, and Tanner, to me, are probably the three position players I'm most interested in, again, with a very quick look, and I'm going to do some other scouting offline. But if you have opinions on these guys, let me know. And then we will turn to the pitchers, where there are three guys that we talked about still available. The relief pitcher, Tim Mays, we kind of thought he might be there, and given that he's so close to being able to contribute at the major league level, probably could contribute at the majors right now, and looks like he could be a really good right-handed reliever if that fastball and slider continue to develop. Got good leadership, got pretty good stamina, so he could definitely work a lot of innings out of the bullpen. He's an interesting prospect, although I don't love taking a pitcher or a reliever 34th overall. Josh Nagy, I don't hate him. He's got 3 pitches that are close-ish to major league quality, and he's not even 18 years old yet, throwing in the mid-90s. He's got high work ethic and high intelligence, not good at holding runners, worried about the control, but if his control develops the way that we think it could, with that stuff and movement, he is a pretty interesting pitcher. Tim Robinson, 18-year-old. This is the guy that we talked about who could have a 3, 4, 5, or 6 pitch arsenal. Probably most likely, if that curve develops, at least a 4 pitch arsenal. Another guy where we like the high work ethic, also like the leadership. Older, almost 19 years old, throws in the mid to low 90s, but think his stuff, movement, and control could all be above average. He's looking for pretty big money. So I'm intrigued by all 3 of the pitching prospects. I don't know that any of them are the direction that we'll go, but there's certainly something to think about with all 3 of them. I'd say particularly the starters. Mays if Mays was just up against those 3 position players that I like, I could maybe convince myself to go with Mays since I'm not in love with any of those position players, but with a couple of potentially high-end starting pitching prospects on the market as well, it'll take some convincing for me to go in the direction of Mays, but if any of you think that's the right move, would love to hear about it. We'll take a look at these 4-star prospects as well. Andy Flores, we talked about him before. If that changeup doesn't develop, he's a high-end reliever most likely. Pete Ginley, looks like he's definitely going to be a reliever. Don't see us going with him, although I do like guys who throw in the high 90s at 18 years old. And then Jim Lance could be a 3-pitch guy if that slider develops, like the work ethic, and could have above average stuff, movement, and control if he fully develops. So I think I can make an argument for all 4 of the starters: Lance, Flores, Robinson, and Nagy. Certainly would not take Ginley. I guess I could be convinced on Tim Mays. So there's 5 pitchers that I initially think are at least intriguing. C.J. Dugan, I think we looked at him. Maybe we didn't. Sometimes I look at the guys who are a little further along coming out of college, but he looks like a reliever as well. So if we were going to go with the reliever, I think you go with Tim Mays, who's the most advanced and has the highest potential according to our scout. But Nagy, Robinson, Flores, and Lance are all interesting to me as pitching prospects. And as we talked about, among the position players, Williams, Notaro, and Tanner are the most interesting to me. But if there's other directions you think we should go, it's always useful for me to get that input. So if you've got thoughts, would love to see them in the comment section down below. And with that, we are going to call it an episode. As I mentioned, 37-29 for Buffalo, playing a bit better of late, 2.5 back. We would be in the playoffs as a wild card if the season were to end today. So we've been playing better over the last few weeks, and now we've got an opportunity to hopefully add some talent for the future to bolster our farm system in the draft. And we will tackle the draft in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.